Hello, it's Philip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London. Now, this afternoon I'm looking at a book which has come to us from the Appellate Press. Excuse me. It's the United Kingdom Supreme Court Yearbook, and it's this one here. It's for the year 2018 to 2019. It's volume 10, and it's been edited by Daniel Clary. And Elizabeth and I discussed the book in some detail. Elizabeth was the lead writer on this particular review. The title we've given our review is The Court of Important, Fiendishly Difficult, Controversial and Contentious Cases. That's exactly, of course, what the Supreme Court does. Let's have a look at the book first. It's a hardback, you can see there. There's the front, then there's the spine. You can probably see it's a heavy book. It runs to something like 800 pages. There's a list at the back of various judgments which are included in the text. There's also various other statistics right at the back. And again, you've got a whole range of very substantial information. I'm looking at the back of the book first. You can see there are footnotes as well, and obviously there is numbering at the sides to find things. There's no actual index as such, because what you've actually got is just the list of the judgments. If we go to the front of the book, we then look at the front page, and you can see the front page is rather nice. It's got a nice little picture and image. 10 years of the Supreme Court, and it's an emblem reimagined by Isabel Williams, and we've written book reviews for Isabel's work in the past. We can just see it again there. Then we go in from that to the main book itself. There's the main page. You can see it lists a whole huge amount of information. There's a website and also an email address. The editorial board is set up there. Dr. Clary at the top, then a number of people underneath him assisting. Then there's the advisory board, some very well-known names there. And then after that you've got a foreword, which are more of in a minute, from Baroness Hale, then an introduction, and then after that you've got the various parts, the commentaries and reflections running through various articles as well, the legal year in review, very, very useful. Remember, we're talking about a little way back now. And then part 4 is actually composition, statistics and tables of cases right at the back. Then there's a foreword, as I said, the foreword coming from Brenda Hale. There we go. Then you go from there into the book itself. A quantitative review of the Supreme Court's first decade. So it's an important book. It has had a lot of publicity. There is a nice little divider here, which does help, a little blue divider, so you can find things. And of course what it has got is quite a lot of statistics, just using a divider for that. Then you get into the yearbook itself. If I just move on from the quantitative review to the actual part 1, commentaries and reflections, and then you've got commentaries on the cases. You've got some commentaries by a whole range of people, and then of course you get the actual, some of the main cases which are set out. For instance, what you've got here, if I can just find it, get the right page, is you've got commentary on a particular judgment there, actually looking about discrimination in gay marriage and so forth. You've got part 2, which is prerogative power and prorogation. That's the suspension of Parliament without rhyme or reason symposium. Obviously that was a very big decision. You've got Lord Panic making a comment there. Then running all the way through, you've got a whole range of other very controversial areas. A lot that I can't really cover in this short review, but as I say, it's a very valuable book as a sort of run through, zip through what has happened during that particular period in time. That's 2018 to 19. So what do we say? Well, it can't be too often the case that the Supreme Court Yearbook gets an almost affectionate mention in the Times newspaper, the TMS Diary, which is there. And there's a nice picture of Brenda Hale and some comments. More of that in a minute. But this year, as soon as this book was published, an article appeared. And it does, or rather it did, actually make a comment. And a good thing too, because certainly this annual publication, it's now in volume 10, should ideally attract the interests of a wider reading public. And in reading the foreword to the yearbook, written by former President of the Supreme Court, Baroness Hale of Richmond, it seemed that the Times diarist was intrigued by her expression of regret over the, quote, spider brooch incident. And there's a picture of her again with the spider brooch. I just thought I'd add that a bit of spice. It is referring to the item of jewellery she wore while, in the words of the diarist, overturning Boris Johnson's prorogation of Parliament 2 years ago. There we go. We all remember it. She explains, that's Lady Hale, that she often wears a brooch, usually to liven up our normally quite sober dress, adding that she should have foreseen that the public and the media would look for a hidden meaning. It's to be hoped, of course, that slightly better informed members of the public and the media might recognise that members of the United Kingdom Supreme Court have a heavy time of it, sitting in judgment over the most important and fiendishly difficult, controversial and contentious cases in the country. That's their job. It was the House of Lords, now it's the Supreme Court. You could argue here, of course, that sobriety of dress becomes less an issue than an imperative. But it depends on your point of view, I think, because really the answer lies in the judgment and the arguments, perhaps. As this is the year that the UK Supreme Court celebrates its 10th anniversary, it seems right that a lively and clearly written text of this yearbook should appear, commencing with recollections of how the new Supreme Court of the United Kingdom came into being. Because there was, to be blunt, there was some controversy about it at the time, as I recall. Many will recall, of course, that we had at that time the Lord Chancellor's Department, now known as the Ministry of Justice, and that was abolished in a surprise move, which quickly led to the establishment of what became known as the new Supreme Court and Judicial Appointments Commission for England and Wales, because again there was a quite substantial reorganisation of both the previous department and the creation of this new Ministry of Justice. And of course the UK's top court had irrevocably left the House of Lords. Remember, it was sitting as an appellate committee of the House of Lords as the final appellate court. And the chief advocate in the matter was the then senior law lord, Lord Bingham, who held that judges should not be legislators. And of course that really goes to the concept, if one recalls British Constitution, of the whole concept of the separation of the powers. Now, like any change of such magnitude, the establishment of the new Supreme Court did not come about without some measure of disquiet and controversy, including concerns about the practical problems of the new premises, IT and so forth, most of which have been resolved. Can I just say, I've been, and many others have, I've had a tour of the Supreme Court and the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council. It is well worthwhile, and a lot of the scepticism, I think, goes as soon as you see what we've created at a cost. It was expensive, but we've created a very, very useful Supreme Court, which I'm sure will last a long time. It's noteworthy to remember, of course, also that the Supreme Court is the only court in the UK where the court sessions are all filmed. From the start, says Baroness Hale, it was provided that the ban on photography and filming in court would not apply to the Supreme Court. Pity they haven't done anything with the other courts, but however, that's another story. The courtrooms are set up with their own cameras. There is live streaming and a catch-up service which allows a hearing to be checked at some point and which is available both to the professionals and to the public. And apparently there have been no problems about advocates grandstanding in a Perry Mason way or a Matlock way, for instance, for the cameras. It hasn't happened. Accessibility to members of the public is another innovation implemented by the Supreme Court, and I welcome it. pop in and pop out again if you will. There's a reception desk, and the wonder of wonders, the security staff are actually quite friendly, in view of the frequently rude, hostile, dictatorial and generally forbidding security staff which one encounters in a number of other courts, which will not be mentioned, and it's difficult to believe, but certainly a welcome development to see a bit of civility from these paid employees of the state. Now, over its more than 800 pages, which is what it's roundabout about, the yearbook itself is organised into the three main parts. Part 1 has the reflections of 5 Supreme Court justices and other commentators. Part 2 gives you features on contributions on the prorogation case, which is the big one. And Part 3, there is included there a comprehensive analysis of all decisions of the court for its 10th legal year, with much of this undertaken by leading advocates who've argued many of these cases in the court. Let me conclude by saying there's an editorial board for this yearbook of 5 and an 11-member elected board that have presided over the formidable task of producing an impressive, highly readable volume with fascinating content. And I think it certainly will enthrall a legal readership as well as interested members of the general public. I found it a book that was readable. It's good. It should be readable. I've always been very impressed with the clarity of the judgments of the most senior court that we have in the country. We're very lucky that we have such able people. The date of publication of the hardback edition is cited as at August 2021. Let's just have one last look at it again. There it is, the front, then the spine. There's nothing on the back, just the spine. Just showing where it is. It's a formidable tome. If I open it in the middle, let's have a look and see what we've got. Part 3, here we go. I didn't get up as far as that when I was looking at the book earlier. Part 3, that's the legal year in review. And you see how it's set out. It's looking at specific areas of substantive law there, and then you've got an introduction and you run through. And there are, of course, some footnotes to assist you with linking in, depending on what you're looking for. Then there's one on constitutional law, of course, equality law, and so on. Altogether, I think an excellent book. Delighted to review it, and we shall look forward to newer reviews in the next few years. Thank you to all. Bye-bye.